Hey adventurers, so today's going to be kind of my thoughts on the year of Sanderson and specifically on the Four Secret Projects as a whole, and kind of ranking them, going through several different topics in this about these books that I wanted to go over. So the first one that I want to go over is actually ranking the story themselves, the story itself of the Secret Projects. So the stories of the Secret Projects, which one is my favorite to least favorite. And so to start out, I do have all four books right here, so very pretty. I will be holding them up and talking about them probably from 4 to 1, I think is the correct order. And yeah, we're gonna see how this works. So number 4 for me, I think, and I've talked about this several times with other Sanderson stories, including many of the Secret Projects, but I have a hard time enjoying a book when it relies so heavily on other books. Obviously, if it's book 3 in a trilogy or something like that, that's completely different because you have to have read those first 3 books, and it's expected to have. But when they're standalone books, I have a hard time when they're so tied into other books, so tied into the Cosmere. And that's how I feel like The Sunlit Man was. You have to have read Stormlight. You really need to have read the Stormlight novellas, as well as some of the Cosmere short stories or novellas the other Cosmere novellas that Sanderson has written, to really truly understand this book. There was a lot that I just didn't have context for because I haven't read 2 of the novellas that I need to. And for that's really the primary reason why this one wasn't my favorite. It's really fast paced, it is good, I enjoyed it. I enjoy following the character that we got to follow, seeing the history, or rather the future of this character, and the inferences of the past that we learn through where this character is at in the timeline of this book. So there's a lot that I really did like about this book, and overall I do really enjoy this book, and I do definitely see myself revisiting it as we continue through in the Cosmere and get further towards the space age of the Cosmere. In place number 2, I actually have 2 books tied here for story, and originally I would have had a clear winner, but as I've been thinking back on the stories, one of them has gone down a little bit and the other one has gone up. And this is mostly one of them I have very, very, very fond memories of listening to, and just I guess I'll put it this way. Tress of the Emerald Sea would have been my number 3 at this point in time, had I not thought back on it and thought back on the experience of starting this year of Sanderson, reading Tress of the Emerald Sea on January 1st. Actually, it may have been January 3rd that I ended up starting it, because that may have been the first work day of the month. I don't remember for certain, but whatever the case was, I ended up, the experience that went into reading this story was so strong and left such an impact. It was just such a great way to start out the year. And then hearing the discussion going around and just seeing how this year of Sanderson started, that really did raise my enjoyment of this book to a large degree. And looking back and seeing the fondness I have for this book, it definitely doesn't sit in the number 3 spot anymore. So it is tied for number 2, and of course the book that is tied for number 2 with is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. This one I enjoyed the story more than Tress at the time of reading it, but as I've continued to let it sit, the story hasn't stuck with me quite as much. I still enjoy it and I would love to reread it, but as I've gone through it, it's just kind of gone down in my estimation just a little bit, and it doesn't quite sit so clearly above Tress as a number 2 anymore. And so really I have Tress and Frugal Wizard here that are sitting about tied for this second or third place, this place in between second and third, if you will. So both of them very enjoyable, both of them very fun stories, but what went down for Frugal went up for Tress, and vice versa. And then of course that leaves number 1 as Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. This is one that the story, I've talked about this before, I talked about it in my review of this book, but I went into this book knowing, okay, this is either going to be my absolute favorite book of the 4 Secret Projects, or it's going to be my least favorite. I didn't know how Sanderson was going to do it, I didn't know the story that he was going to tell, but based on the inspirations that I was hearing from it, based on just the various things that I knew about it, which was very little, before actually sitting down and reading the book, I was not sure if I would love this book or not love it so much. And it ended up being my favorite. It's there does seem to be a lot of Cosmere connections, or implications maybe would be better, but the story in this one was just so fun, and just of course they're all well, Tress was also very lighthearted, but it's just the story of it and the different worlds that we're seeing. Really everything about this book worked for me on a level that Tress didn't quite, and none of the other ones did either, as much as I enjoyed all 4 of the books of these secret projects. So that is my ranking. At number 1 I have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. At number 2 I have Tress of the Emerald Sea and The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. And then at number 4 we have The Sunlit Man. So all good, all really solid books, but that is the order that I actually ranked them in. Okay, let's move on to the second topic that I really want to talk about for these ones. We will start with the art inside these books. So immediately, the thing that we knew about these secret projects going in was that they were going to be chock full of art, each and every one of them. And they are. And it's beautiful. This is the first book, or the first of the Tress ones. It's basically the first thing you come across other than the end pages here and the cover. And it's just lovely art all throughout. There's the actual cover with a little bit more, and you just go through here and it's just beautiful art piece after beautiful art piece. And some of these do one of my all-time favorite things, and that is have a largely grayscale or black and white image with just a single color used to as a splash of color to accent and bring out part of the illustration. And this one does that so often, and it's just beautiful to me. As well as things like the chapter headers, stuff like that, the way that the chapter headers grow as you continue through the story, stuff like that, and just all throughout it there's so much beautiful art in this book. And that is not going to change. Handbook. Again, we've got beautiful art. These end pages are some of my favorite of any book ever, as well as this story, and also the way that the art plays into the story is so cool to me. There's so much art in this book. It's just every page is art. Again, chapter headers are beautiful. We've got a little story, secondary little story that's going on in the margins of the pages here that I haven't even gone and read the entire thing or looked through the entire thing of, but I know that it's beautiful because I can see it, and I really look forward to rereading all 4 of these books with the physical copies, because I listened to them on audiobook the first time, but I really look forward to rereading them so that I can then see all the art as I'm going through it. And let's see if I can find a picture. There's an image. And it's just a beautiful full color illustration all throughout, lots of art through this one. And then the handbook itself being illustrated all throughout, just absolutely amazing. The art in this one, again, knocked it out of the park. Then we get to Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Once again, we've got bamboo there, very important to the story, but then you get into the actual art itself, and I was so blown away by how much art that was in this one, because I was listening to the audiobook, and like every 5 minutes there'd be a pause for a moment to read the description of the art that's on the page. And so of course you got chapter headers again, always with the chapter headers. I love chapter headers. It's one of my favorite parts of any story, is any book, is when there's chapter headers. They're different per character, they change throughout the story, all that kind of stuff. Let's see if I can find an actual piece of art. So then we have our first piece of art, and it's beautiful. And that's not even a super detailed art, that's almost like a water painting line art type thing, and it's really pretty. Then you get more, then you get to the first full color illustration, just gorgeous once again. And all throughout it, it's the one thing that I will say about this is that I am not the biggest fan of the manga art style, and that definitely, there's a lot of influence in the story as well as in the art for this book, and so it's as beautiful and as much of it as there is in this book. That is the one thing that I would say is kind of takes my appreciation for this art down just a little bit. Finally, we get to The Sunlit Man, the 4th book, and again, I haven't even hardly looked at this art because I have not seen these end pages. Oh, I did see that one. But we'll start with this first end page. Just beautiful, absolutely. Again, the cover art is beautiful. start looking through it and see the actual art that's inside. Again, chapter headers all over the place, very different style for chapter headers. It's very sci-fi feeling more than fantasy, which this book really is. We'll get to our first illustration there. Very simplistic illustration. This one actually is illustrated by Hernanda Sousa, Nabetsa Zitro, and Kudriakin. So 3 different artists contributed to the art of this book. And let's see, let's find another art piece. There's a first full color illustration, and that feels very, very sci-fantasy to me, as this whole book really does. So there's just a lot. Once again, the art in this book, oh, there's another one, another illustration there. And they do, once again, do that mostly black and white with a splash of color to accentuate and to really make the art pop. And so there's lots of art throughout all of this, and I have not looked at all of it, but again, I was listening to the audiobook and they stop and do their art descriptions, and it's just, there's a lot of really cool art in this book, and I am looking forward to, physically reading these books with the art in them so that I can really see it all as I go through the story, because that's one of the things that I really love doing. Any illustrated edition of books, I love being able to go through and see the art as I go through it. So I think if I were to sit and rank the 4 secret projects based on art, I would probably have as my number 4. As much as I enjoyed the book and as much as I do like the art and as much as I like what they were doing with it, I think I would put Frugal Wizard as number 4. Then we would put Sunlit Man as number 3. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter would be number 2. And, of course, that puts Tress in the Emerald Sea as number 1. So the next thing that I want to do, I have 3 more points that I want to do. 2 of them kind of go together, so instead of doing them in the way that I have written them down, I'm going to swap one of them and do that one first instead, because then I can do the other 2 together as they kind of fit together a little bit better. This is keeping on theme with the art though, and that is, actually this isn't keeping on theme with the art. The art, I'll come back to the art in a second. This next section, I'm just going to go over the titles of the books themselves and rank them, because I like ranking titles. So as I've been doing, I'm just going to go from the first one, which is Tress, to the last one, and we'll talk a little bit about the titles, and then I'll put them in my ranking that I think is correct for the ranking, for my opinion. So Tress of the Emerald Sea. I recently did a video titled, or top 10 fantasy book titles, I think is what it was. And Tress of the Emerald Sea was on that list. So we already know that I like this title. I'll briefly go over what I talked about with that one though, and that is basically the title, the Emerald Sea. Automatically you put a color in it, I'm intrigued. Telling me that it's a sea that is green, and automatically makes me want to know, why is the sea green, and is it actually made out of emeralds? And then you add the character's name, the name Tress or Triss or anything similar to that. For some reason I really like that name. Triss is one of the Redwall books, and I've always liked the title of that book because the character's name is super cool. And Tress, again, very similar. Automatically I like that. So the mixture of the cool first name as well as the Emerald Sea, it just works really well for me. Moving on to The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. This is a mouthful. It's a hard title to say. I think I've struggled over it every single time, so most of the time I call it Frugal Wizard. But I really, really, really like this title. Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. It's a mouthful, and it's long, and part of what makes me love it is how long it is, but also how by the time you get to the end of the title, you forget how it started. And so you actually have to think about what the title is saying to truly be able to understand what it's getting at. But The Frugal Wizard, so of course we've got a wizard. Automatically intrigued because I like fantasy. Then it's a handbook, gives you information about whatever it is that the topic is on. And then for Surviving Medieval England, I like medieval England as a setting. Survival stories are always great for me, so a handbook for Surviving Medieval England, that sounds awesome. And then because it's the Frugal Wizard's Handbook, I'm automatically basically sold on what this title is, and I want to know more about it. And besides that, I just love how long and hard to say it is, because that's really fun. Then we have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. These are proper nouns. Proper nouns. Yumi, of course, is the name of a character, and then Nightmare Painter is the job description or the job title of a character, and it's basically what that other character goes by. And so Yumi and the Nightmare Painter it's maybe not What we do know about it is that it's about these two characters. The book is about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter and their interactions, their relationship, whatever it is that you want to call it. That's what this book is about. And then finally, we have The Sunlit Man. That's automatically a cool title. When you describe a character, the man is sunlit. You want to know, why is he sunlit? Is this something to do with the magic of the world? Is this something to do with the fact that he's standing and the sun is shining on the back of his head or something like that, and so all that you see for the people who are looking at him is a silhouette, or just a being with super bright light surrounding him? Who knows what that could mean, but it's a really solid title that just tells you what you think of, or gives you some information on this main character again. And that's really what all these books are, or all these titles are, is a description of the main character in some way, shape, or form. Let's quickly go over my ranking of these titles. I think we probably know which one is first, and if you were listening closely, you probably know which one is last. But I'm gonna go over them anyways. So first off, in number 4, we have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I like the book. The title isn't my favorite. It's okay. It's a good title. It actually fits the book really well. It's not my favorite. In terms of just title aesthetics, it's not my favorite. That again brings us to this number 3 spot though, which is a tie once again. I think that it's less of a tie though, and that we do actually have a clearer third and a clearer second, but The Sunlit Man and The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England I would put as my number 3 and number 2, probably. Something like that. And of course, that leaves us with number 1, which is Tress of the Emerald Sea. And to no surprise, this is my favorite title, especially if you've already watched that other video where you saw me talk about this one and not talk about any of those other 4. It's a great title. I personally think that it's a great title, and what it is more than anything else is it really fits my tastes. And then the last of these two the last section of topics that I want to talk about is the covers for the secret projects, and then kind of compare them a little bit to the mock-up covers that were originally released before we really saw anything about these covers. And so let me real quickly go and pull those up so that I can see them. So we've got the 4 secret projects here, and I am going to compare each of them individually as we've been doing, but I will start at the beginning. To start off with, we'll go briefly over the 4 covers, and you've seen them several times now, so I'm just kind of going to rank the 4 covers. Of course, we've got Tress of the Emerald Sea here, and then The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and of course, finally, The Sunlit Man. Very pretty covers, each of them. So now that you've seen them, I think if I were to rank them based on the official covers that have been released, and I'm not talking about the official tour covers, because I don't really care for any of the official tour covers. I like the I like the official Tress release for that one quite a bit. But in terms of ranking the actual covers, I actually am going to go backwards. I'm going to go Sunlit Man as my number 1, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter as my number 2, Frugal Wizard as my number 3, and then Tress is going to be my number 4. Maybe a little bit different of a ranking than most people have there, but that's okay. But now I'm going to talk about them in relation to the mock-up cover art that was shown. And again, we'll start with our first one with Secret Project number 1, Tress of the Emerald Sea. And if I will pop a picture up here of both the 2 covers, and we'll compare them a little bit. You can see that there's quite a bit of difference between the mock-up cover and the actual released cover. There's some things about the release cover that I really like. I really like the plants that are growing around the top of the cover there. I like the moon there and everything. There's a decent amount there that we like. We can clearly tell that this girl is reaching out for something, for a change from her current life. We can see that she's holding the cup that is so important to her. Those are things that become very important to the story and stuff like that. And so I like a lot of that, but I find the execution a little clunky. I'm going to use that term. I really like the energy of the or the activeness of the mock-up cover with the waves splashing against the rock. The girl seemingly trying to survive there on that rock. The giant moon in the background. I feel like that cover, that mock-up cover, although we don't have as much color difference, I feel like it matches the tone that I wanted from this book a lot more, and I really like that cover. However, that being said, I think that the actual official cover does match the tone of the story better than the tone of my hope for the story. Coming on to Secret Project number 2 for Frugal Wizards. This is basically the same cover. There's a little bit more coloring difference, a little more color added to it, but overall the colors are, or the cover itself is might near exactly the same. The difference is mostly that there's some gold on this title, or on this cover as well, whereas in the mock-up cover there isn't. But that being said, I like the blue of the mock-up cover. I feel like it's a little bit different. I do like the blue of the official cover too, but I feel like the purple, almost the mix of the purple in with that blue on the mock-up cover looks really good. So in terms of the two covers, I don't actually have one that I prefer over the other one. I think they both look really good for Secret Project number 2, and they're both basically the same. Secret Project number 3, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. This is another one where the official cover looks, again, we have more color on the official cover because they had the opportunity to use more color, and I really do appreciate that. Obviously it was well funded to be able to use several different colors on the cover, and that's really cool that it was able to be done. But if we look at the mock-up cover, again, it's so energetic. There's so much energy in this cover, and I really like the pink of the mock-up cover. The blue, I actually prefer the blue of the official cover, but the pink of the mock-up cover, or the fuchsia or magenta or whatever color it was, it pops a little bit more than it does on the official cover, and I feel like the poses that the characters are in is a little more, it simulates the mixing of the two worlds a little bit more that is so prominent to this story. And so once again, I will say that I actually like the mock-up cover a little bit more than I like the official cover on this one. And finally, of course, we get to Sunlit Man. This is the one that arguably has the most change. The art style is completely different, the coloring is completely different. There's some similarities to it, but really very few, other than there's a man standing there with something bright in his hand, there's rings around him in the back, there's floating things around him in the back, and that's really all that we know about this cover. Those are the similarities, and the red cover, of course. But I almost feel like the mock-up cover looks very spy. It reminds me of like James Bond or something like that, where it's very much a a spy type character, and that's what makes it look like he's trying to steal whatever it is that he's holding, something like that, steal it and get away with it type thing. Whereas the official cover for Sunlit Man, I feel like fits the story way better than the mock-up cover does, actually. I feel like it becomes that, oh, this is still fantasy. It's very sci-fi as well, but it's still a high fantasy adventure, survival story, in a way that the mock-up cover doesn't really give me that same personality. And so you'll find that, I mentioned this with Tress as well, the mock-up cover and the official cover don't tell the same story, but the official covers for both of these books fits the story told better. And I do actually really like the mock-up cover for Secret Project number 4, Sunlit Man, but I think that in terms of just execution and knowing what the story is, I actually do like the Sunlit Man a little bit better. It's a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more striking, whereas the mock-up cover, if I were to look at the mock-up cover for Sunlit Man or for Secret Project number 4, I would say this looks like the story The 39 Steps, and that's what I would think of from that story. And that's very different from the story that is being told in Sunlit Man. So I will actually give this one to the Sunlit Man. So those are my thoughts on the 4 secret projects. I think if I were to compare each of the 4 secret projects individually as packaged as a whole, which one do I like the most? Story is going to play a huge role into that, as well as the experience of reading the book. And in that case, it's pretty much tied between Secret Project number 1, or between Tress of the Emerald Sea and Yumi and the Nightmare Painter for me. The things that made me like Yumi so much more than Tress are kind of evened out when you compare the things that I like about Tress more. So I think for that first place, it is going to be a tie between Yumi and Tress for the overall satisfaction, I guess. The overall satisfaction with the secret project. Number 3 and number 4 are going to be tied. And then I actually will do this again. Number 2 and number 4 are tied. Frugal Wizard and Sunlit Man are tied for that number 3 place. They're both very different experiences from each of them. I get very different things out of each of them when you take into account the art, when you take into account the experience, when you take into account the physical book that you're holding in your hand and the colors of it and everything like that. I think that the 4 books are actually all pretty close to each other in terms of the overall experience of consuming the books and of this Year of Sanderson. Overall, the Year of Sanderson has been a really good experience. I think the boxes have been fun to get every month. I'm still waiting on my December box as of the time of filming this, but it may have arrived and my video for it put up by the time you see this video. And if that's the case, that's awesome, because then I have gone through the entire Year of Sanderson by the time you're seeing this, and this serves as the wrap-up that I wanted it to be for this Year of Sanderson. Other than that, I don't have a ton to say. I probably talk some of these topics in some shorts coming up here for a little bit for the next couple of weeks, but that's okay. They should be pointing back towards this video for people to consume the whole long video, because I know that it's going to be a rather lengthy video, especially for our channel, which doesn't usually go this long of videos. Anyways, I want to just say thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure, and please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.